Any other person?
So,
So thank you, Mary.
your screen now? Can you start
Okay.
your screen?
Yes, I can share my screen now. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can anyone see my screen? Can you see my screen from over there?
Yes, sir.
You can. Please, can you read the title that you have here?
Phrases.
Very good. I prepared a slide, but I prefer to begin. I prepared a slide, but I prefer to begin. Finite verb sentence, of course, but it can form part of what? A sentence. The first definition says a phrase is any collection of related words that, unlike a sentence, has no combination of subject predicates. The words in a phrase function together so that the phrase itself acts as a single part of speech. Phrases can never stand alone as sentences. Now, I will try to break that down. And I will go with the second definition that says a phrase is a group of words, of two or more words. So whenever you have two or more words, it becomes a group without a finite verb. Then you have a phrase. Okay? But to understand the definition of a phrase or meaning of a phrase, we need to understand what a finite verb is. And we're going to dwell a little on that. So a finite verb is a verb that agrees with the subject of an expression in time and number, or in time or number. Now, by time, we simply refers to tense, okay? So if a verb agrees with the subject of a sentence in time, then it shows us whether it is in the present, whether the action is in the present or in the past tense, or far in the past. And if it agrees in number, it tells us whether that subject is singular or plural. So importantly, what makes a sentence is the agreement between the subject and the verb, the finite verb in this sense. But then if there is no agreement between the subject and the verb in time, which is if it does not show tense, and it does not agree in number, if it does not show singularity or plurality, then that expression is a finite verb. That expression is a phrase, pardon me. So is there any question on that? Yeah, before we move on, please. Any question on that? Hello?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, is that understood what a phrase is and the concept of a finite verb?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I can't hear you clearly. Your line is breaking. I can't hear you clearly. Your line is breaking.
Yes, I understand.
All right. So we move on. All right. From the definition of what? A phrase. Now, a phrase can be written as a noun, verb, hard verb. Okay, Mary, you are raising your hand. Please go ahead, ask your question. Hello, Mary. All right, Mary, I guess you may have to put your hand down. But if you have a question, kindly unmute yourself and go ahead. All right, thank you, Mary. So we say a phrase can be written as a noun, verb, hard verb, or preposition in a sentence. And this simply means that a phrase can take any position and can function as any of the parts of speech. If, for instance, you have a phrase in the subject position, that phrase, of course, would be a noun phrase. If you have a phrase in the verb position, the phrase becomes what? A verb phrase, and sometimes a phrasal verb. If you have a verb in the adverbial position, that phrase is an adverbial phrase, especially when the phrase performs the function of an adverb. And the same thing, if you have the verb in the position of an adjective, if you have the phrase, phrase in the position of an adjective, especially in the complement position after the verb, when you have subject, verb, complement, the C, you can have an adjectival phrase. And any phrase that begins with a preposition is a prepositional phrase. So then you can see that a phrase can, be written as any of these parts of speech. So let's consider the function of a phrase. So the function of a phrase is based entirely on its structure. Okay, on the basis of their functions, phrases are divided into various types. So it is the type of phrase that we have in a sentence that will determine the function of that phrase. So let's begin with the noun phrase. Okay. So a noun phrase can occupy any position that a noun or a pronoun can occupy in a sentence. So if you have a phrase in the position of the subject, it becomes a noun phrase, which means it has a noun as its head word. The most important word in a noun phrase is a noun. Now say it functions like a noun in a sentence with all its other determiners that modify the noun. The noun is the head word of the sentence and others are put after or before the noun. Now we're going to take examples of phrases according to the type as we go on. So a noun phrase consists of a noun as the head word and other words, usually modifiers and determiners. Okay. When we say modifiers, these are words that we use to that we put before a noun to make it a phrase. For instance, if you have boy as a noun, and then you had there, THE, to boy, there, in that sense, is what? A modifier. And that's what makes that expression a phrase. Okay, so we have the boy, a girl, a big boy. So R and big, in that sense, would be what? The modifiers that will make the boy a phrase. So in that sense, we have a noun phrase with the head word as what? Boy. The complete phrase serves as what? A noun in a sentence. Now let's look at some examples. Here we have a noun phrase that has a noun plus modifiers. Okay. Here we have she is wearing a beautiful attire. Now, if you look at this phrase here, a beautiful attire here is the phrase. A beautiful attire here is what? Is the phrase. So what kind of phrase is a beautiful attire? Anyone? Yes, Mary, please go ahead.
Adverbial phrase.
Adverbial phrase. Okay.
Because
All right. Mary, let's take a look at it. Adverbial or adjectival? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Let's look at it this way. If you have she here is what? The subject, right?
What? Subject, right?
Yes, sir.
And then you have is wearing is what? The verb, which is also the verb phrase, right?
Yes.
So if you have she is wearing, let's say, a dress there will be what? Will be the object,
The
right?
dress. Yeah,
Will
yes.
be the object. Good. In the object position, you cannot have an adverbial. Is that okay?
Okay, sir.
So what you have in the object position has to be a noun or a noun phrase or a pronoun.
Or a noun phrase or a pronoun.
Okay.
Now let's look at a beautiful attire. You know, I said before that
Now let's look at
the most important word in a noun phrase is the noun, the head word. Now, a here is a modifier. Beautiful is an adjective, and it's also a modifier that is telling us more about what? Attire. Attire here means dress. She is wearing a dress. So now you have a beautiful dress. So this here is a noun phrase in the object position. Is that okay, Mary?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you remove beautiful, or you remove you have she is wearing attire, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the sentence can still stand because the phrase, the most important word in that phrase is the what? Is the noun, and that's why it's a noun phrase. So when you have a group of words that has the noun as the most important word or the head word, then you have the noun phrase. And the noun phrase can appear in the subject position, can appear in the object position, or any other position where you can have the noun. Okay, so in this case, the noun phrase will be functioning as the object of the what? Of the verb, because it is the object position. Is that okay? Just in case you're asked for the function of what? First, if you ask for the grammatical name, it is what? A noun phrase. But then if you now ask for the function, is what? The function will be as object of the verb. Now let's look at the second example. She brought herself a watch. She brought herself a watch. Now, what is the noun phrase there? Please, I want other people to make contributions. Mary has been very active, and I appreciate that. Anyone? What is the noun phrase in she brought herself?
Herself. She brought herself. She brought herself.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So let's look at it very holistically. Now, the first thing I advise students to do is to break the sentence down into a structure. Okay, so you know the elements of the sentence. In this case, we have she in what? The subject position, right? And then we have brought in the verb position. And then we have ourself in the complement position. Because ourself refers back to what? She. And then you have a watch, which is what? The object. So this sentence, the structure is SVCO. So the noun phrase there is what? A watch in the object position. So it says as now in the object position. So that's a noun phrase. Is that okay? Hello, please. I'd like to get a response.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, this is what you just look out for to identify a noun phrase. You discover that the noun is the most important word, as I said before, in the expression, in the phrase. And a word cannot stand alone as a phrase. It has to be two or more words without a finite verb. So in these two examples, you see that we have two or more words without a finite verb. A beautiful attire. A is an article that is serving as a modifier. Beautiful is an adjective that is modifying the attire. Okay? Telling us more about the attire. It is not a horrible attire. It is not a bad attire. It is what? A beautiful attire. And in the second example, you have a watch. Okay, because of our time, we need to move on to other examples. Let's move on. Okay, very quickly, let's touch on these two examples and then move to another type of phrase. The house with cobwebs is abandoned. What is the noun phrase there? Anybody?
The house.
Beautiful. Okay, so you have the house in the subject position, right? Okay, but then you see, the house, yes, is a phrase, but at the same time, because if you divide this, let's try and divide this. We have subject, and then you have what? The verb. And then you have the complements, as the case may be. Okay. Please look at this. The house with cobwebs put together will be what? The noun phrase in this expression, because the entire phrase is in the position of the subject. So the house with cobwebs. This is what we call post modifier. Anything that comes after the noun is post modifying the noun. This is pre-modifier, but they are both modifiers. There, coming before house, and then with cobwebs, describing the kind of house we are talking about. Not the house covered or painted white, but the house with what? Cobwebs. So the head word in this expression is what? House. And that's why it's a noun phrase. And it is a phrase because it does not have a finite verb. In fact, there is no verb at all in this expression. No verb at all in this expression. Okay? So then the function, what is the function? Because it is in the subject position, it will function as the subject of the what? Of the verb, is. Yes. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, so that's a noun phrase. Let's move on to the other example. A man on the roof was shouting. So what would be the noun phrase here?
A man on the roof.
Beautiful. Yes. The noun phrase is put together, a man on the roof. And why is it so? Can you tell me why everything here is the noun phrase?
Because there is no verb.
Yes, there's no verb. Yeah, that is one. No verb.
And
Yeah,
it
that is
has,
one.
and it has a
Okay. And it is in the subject position. Okay. So it's a noun phrase because it is occupying the position of a noun. Okay, that is very good. That is very good. If you ask for the function of this noun phrase, it will be
For the function of this noun
functioning
phrase,
as the subject of, see, this is not just a verb, but this is a phrasal verb, was shouting. So it will function as the subject of the phrasal verb, the verb phrase was shouting. We will get to verb phrase as time goes on, if not in this class, in the next class. When you have more than one verb in the verb position, what you have is a verb phrase. Is that okay? So was shouting is an example of a verb phrase. All right, thank you. Let's quickly move on. We have just 9 more minutes before we bring this class to a close. So we say a sentence can also contain more noun phrases. For example, the girl with green eyes bought a cute cat. Here we have 2 noun phrases, right? The girl with green eyes is a phrase, and then a cute what? Cat is also a phrase. So we have 2 noun phrases here. One in the subject position and the other in the object position. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's quickly move on to adjectival phrase. Adjectival phrase. Can you read from there?
An adjective phrase is a group of words along with its modifiers that functions as an adjective in a sentence. An adjective phrase works as an adjective to transform or tell about a noun or a pronoun in a sentence.
Yes, it is simple. You see, an adjective phrase or adjectival phrase performs the same function as an adjective. What does an adjective do in a sentence? An adjective describes a noun, right? Tells us more about a noun. It modifies a noun. Very good. So an adjective phrase basically also has a modifier, just like the other example that we saw, a beautiful attire. A beautiful there would be an adjective phrase. If you remove attire, a beautiful, okay? So what an adjective phrase does is to modify the noun in the expression. So let's look at the examples that we have. He is wearing a strong, flowery perfume. So what would be the adjective phrase here? Don't forget, it must be more than one word. Anybody? Okay. Yes, I had flowery. Yes, flowery there is the adjective. The first thing you do is to identify the adjective. And flowery comes before perfume. So it is modifying perfume. Now, because what we are looking out for is an adjective phrase and not just an adjective. You before the adjective, okay, together with the adjective. Not everything with object. E, the subject. You have is wearing, the verb. A strong, flowery perfume. So a strong, flowery here will be what? The adjective phrase that is modifying what? Perfume. Is that okay?
Okay.
So you have both A, which is an article, strong, which is another adjective, strong. Adjective phrase. So the adjective phrase also has a head word, which is the most important word phrase. Flowery film. Let's quickly go through. I guess we just stop at adjective phrase today, but let's look at other examples. Cinderella looks gorgeous in a white gown. What is the adjective phrase here?
What
Anybody?
is the adjective phrase here? Anybody?
First, what you look out for is the
First, what you
noun.
Cinderella looked-
Adjective is modifying. You said?
Cinderella looked gorgeous.
That would be okay. Now let's break it down again. You see, Cinderella here is the subject, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Verb.
Looked here is what? The verb.
Verb.
Gorgeous, yes, is an adjective. Okay, but it is in the complement position, describing Cinderella. So what you need to do is you pick it from what is modifying the noun. The noun here is what? Gown, right?
Yes.
And to identify an adjective or an adjective phrase, you'll be looking out for where a noun is modified. Okay, where you have a noun that is described. So here, what is describing this noun is what? White.
White.
White. You know, you can't take white alone. White is an adjective, right? Color. Adjective of color. Right?
Yes, sir.
But because white is just one word, it will not be a phrase. So that is why you take the word that is modifying white together with it to show possession. White, then gown is the word, the noun. So white here is what? Is the adjective phrase. Is that okay? We have less than 3 more minutes, so let me quickly go through these 2 other examples. He gave me a glass full of wine. He gave me a glass full of wine. Okay, so what will be the, already we know that glass is the noun there. So full of wine here will be the adjective phrase because it is telling us more about the what? The glass, right? Okay, so that is the adjective phrase. So you can see that the adjective phrase can come before
we can see
or
that
after
the
the
adjective
noun.
phrase can come before or after the noun.
Is that okay? So let's look at the final example
Yes,
here.
sir.
A boy from Australia won the race. A boy from Australia won the race. Okay, this is a bit complicated, but your adjective phrase here is from Australia.
Adjective phrase here is from Australia.
The boy there is what? Is the head word.
The boy-
Sorry, is the noun.
Boy there is what?
From Australia is telling us more about boy, right? And whatever tells us more about the noun in the sentence is an adjective. Yes. Okay. So that is what makes from Australia there is the what is the adjective phrase. So we will take it from prepositional phrase in our next class. We have just 1 more minute. Do you have questions, please? Okay, now since we have less than a minute, let me just do a wrap up. I want to say a very big thank you to all of you who have participated in this class. Mary, I appreciate your contributions. Please keep it up. So next week, we continue with our English class. Thank you very much. Have a lovely week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mauricio.